Hello and welcome to part 4 of my series on the Romanov dynasty. We last left off with the death of Fyodor III, and now we're at a very interesting part of Russian history where we're beginning the transition into Russia becoming an empire. And in order to tell that story, we need to discuss Sofia Alekseyevna. She was the third surviving daughter of the Tsar Alexei. While she was raised to be very well educated, daughters of the Tsar at this time were not expected to provide much in the court. They were often kept away from public view and viewed important meetings such as church meetings from behind a screen. But Sofia stepped in as regent for Russia during a rather tumultuous succession between two heirs from the Tsar's separate marriages. The first was the 16-year-old Ivan, who was rather unwell, and 9-year-old Peter. Make sure you remember him, he's going to be important later. While Sofia was officially recognized as regent at the age of 24, it's possible that she may have had prior influence over her brother Fyodor while he was on the throne. And Sofia was a very well-educated and well-informed woman, and she was not afraid to make her presence known. Rather than being hidden from the crowd at her brother Fyodor's funeral, she was determined to let the public see her. And in the short time following Fyodor's death was the Streltsy Uprising, which Sofia and her relatives would eventually take advantage of in order to help cement her power. The root of this uprising lay in the fact that there were two heirs that could potentially rally for the throne. So we have the Miloslavskis, which is the branch of the family that Sofia was from, and the Narishkins, which is the branch of the family that Peter was from. Rumors had begun to spread around Moscow that the Narishkins had murdered Ivan from the Miloslavsky family. And this led to a massive revolt of the Streltsy, which the Streltsy was a hereditary corps of military. The family had to prove that Ivan was still alive by holding him up to the mob. But the mobs and rebels would still wreak havoc throughout the city. In fact, it would traumatize young Peter so much that he would be affected by it all throughout his life. Now, the boyars and the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church had decided that they were just going to go ahead and crown Peter, but Sofia rallied against this. Sofia claimed that this broke monarchic law. She claimed that Ivan had been the rightful heir. Now, Ivan was pretty much looked over as being a proper czar because he was rather sickly, so Sofia then proposed a shared crown between herself and her brother. But the court very quickly vetoed this proposal, leaving Sofia to petition the Streltsy for support, which they initially offered in favor of Ivan, but they soon turned against her. She eventually managed to get support from a man named Fyodor Shoklovity, who had political power as a member of the Boyar Duma. He helped her stomp out the rebellion, and as a thank you, Sofia made him head of the Streltsy. And then Sofia had the figureheads of the rebellion executed. Sofia's regency lasted for a period of 7 years, and during that time she made efforts to organize Russia's military. She also loosened restrictions on detention for runaway serfs. And she pushed for more education and connections with European culture. She credited a lot of her inspiration to the Enlightenment of the Baroque period. She's also credited with the creation of the Slavonic Greek-Latin Academy, which was one of Russia's first institutes of higher education. She also signed a treaty of eternal peace with Poland, which, given much of Poland's history, you can imagine how successful that was. She also signed a peace treaty with China over division of lands, and she also led campaigns against Turkey. However, the young Peter lurked in the background, waiting for the age that he would be old enough to take power. When Peter turned 17, his relatives began to demand that Sofia hand over power. And at this point, it had been agreed on a joint rulership between Peter and Ivan. But given Ivan's inability to rule, he was basically just a pawn. In response, Sofia was advised to declare herself as Tsarina. She then tried to rally the Streltsy against Peter's family, but this ultimately didn't work. Peter had already developed his own backing of soldiers. In the end, Sofia gave up her power and surrendered her counselors. Peter then had her interred at the Novodevichy convent. In 1698, more of her supporters tried to put her back on the throne. Now, it's likely that Sofia didn't have anything to do with this particular plot, but nevertheless, the plot was unsuccessful, and because of this, Peter forced her to take the veil in the same convent that she basically stayed in as a prison. She was also kept very isolated. She wasn't allowed to speak to other nuns in the monastery except for on Easter, and Peter had the bodies of the rebel Streltsy hung outside of her windows. Sofia eventually died in the convent in 1704. Peter himself said of Sofia that she was a princess endowed with all the accomplishments of body and mind to perfection, had it not been for her boundless ambition and insatiable desire for governing. In some ways, Sofia could be considered a failure or just a footnote in history, but in many ways she could also be considered groundbreaking. Though not necessarily a ruler in her own right, she was the first of the female rulers in the Romanov dynasty. Don't forget to tune in next time when we talk about Peter the Great, the man who made Russia into an empire and towed the line between enlightened genius and tyrannical madman.